Fred MacMurray was a talented actor who's nowadays best known for his starring role on the classic series My Three Sons, as well as his numerous starring roles in Walt Disney pictures like The Absent-Minded Professor. Although Fred mostly found himself typecast as the nice guy in the media, one of his most other memorable roles came when he was cast as a villain in Billy Wilder's acclaimed 1944 film noir Double Indemnity. Join Factsverse as we take a look at Fred MacMurray's insufferable final years. When Fred MacMurray passed away in 1991, he was 83 and had been working in the entertainment industry for over half a century. At that point, he was best known to the public for portraying widower and aeronautical engineer Stephen Douglas on the classic ABC sitcom My Three Sons. That aired from 1960 to 72. He also acted in a great number of films, including The Absent-Minded Professor for Disney. Walt Disney himself was a fan of Fred, claiming no one else in the industry could do family-friendly comedy quite like he could. Though Walt had plenty of praise for Fred's comedy skills, those comedy skills weren't what the actor wanted to be known for. He found himself increasingly agitated by his continued fame from family-friendly productions like My Three Sons and his Disney work. Fred would have preferred to continue making a name for himself with his more dark and mature roles, such as the one he had in Double Indemnity. At the time of his passing, Fred was being treated for cancer, though the official cause of death was pneumonia. He died within a day of being admitted to the hospital. Though friends, family, and co-workers were saddened to see the star pass, they were glad he was no longer suffering. Fred's final years had been tumultuous, both because of his ongoing battle with failing health and because he never got to be the kind of Hollywood star he truly wanted. His career began on stage before branching out into film and TV. Before his death, he had appeared in over 80 films. The most critically acclaimed, of course, is Double Indemnity. That feature showcased Fred in a rare villain role, whereas the actor was predominantly typecast as the nice guy. While critics loved seeing Fred as the villain, audiences always seemed to want to see him as a loving man. Fred's greatest commercial success in the cinemas came as a result of his work with Walt Disney. He appeared in The Absent-Minded Professor and its sequel, The Son of Flubber. The role Fred played in these two films went on to be played by Robin Williams in the 1997 film Flubber. Fred could also be seen in the classic live-action Disney features The Shaggy Dog and The Happiest Millionaire. But he remained most popular for his work as the lead character in the long-running series My Three Sons, which was still popular in syndication at the time of his death. The show revolved around the character of Stephen Douglas taking care of his three sons after the death of their mother. Teen heartthrob Don Grady played one of the sons alongside real-life brothers Stanley and Barry Livingston. Don Grady has since passed away in 2012 at age 68. Stanley and Barry are still alive. All three former child stars were saddened to see their beloved on-screen father pass, though they shared his close family's sentiments that the star's final years had been tumultuous and the end had probably come as a relief. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already, and stick around for more of Fred MacMurray. Whenever Fred was asked how he felt about the success of My Three Sons, he would say it was the child stars portraying his three titular sons that deserved all the credit. Perhaps this is why those three former child actors went on to speak so highly of him in the wake of his passing. Although Fred was an actor who went out of his way in his professional career to prove to the public that he wasn't a nice guy, it seems that his nice guy demeanor on screen was more than just an act. Although Fred downplayed the massive amounts of attention he got as a result of starring on My Three Sons, it can't be denied that his role on the show has gone down as one of his most memorable, and had a fairly staggering impact on his career. It was his turn on My Three Sons that caught the attention of Disney, leading to Fred making his appearances in numerous of his live-action films. While Fred's roles in these features were certainly beneficial for his career, he, once again, would have preferred to have been acting in more challenging features. He may have found himself typecast in the role of a nice guy over the years, but the actor certainly had immense range. One of Fred's rare opportunities to show his true acting talents came in Double Indemnity. Of course, given that Double Indemnity came in 1944, this role came well over a decade before My Three Sons even started. Fred MacMurray was actually a very prominent serious actor during Hollywood's early golden age. He was born in 1908 in Illinois to a concert violinist father. When Fred was 5, his father passed away, and his mother moved the family to her home state of Wisconsin. It was here that Fred came of age, excelling at sports while attending Beaver Dam High School. He went on to attend Wisconsin's Carroll College. After the death of his father at such an early age, his family wasn't the most well-off family on the block, prompting Fred to seek alternative means to pay for his tuition. He paid his tuition fees by taking on small roles as an extra in local film productions. He also made some money playing in orchestras and singing, which led to him joining a fairly prominent vocal ensemble called the California Collegians, which toured nationally. With them, he wound up in New York City. While the city was merely one small stop on the tour for the vocal ensemble, Fred decided he wanted to stay and try his hand at Broadway. He went on to make his Broadway debut in 1930, appearing alongside Sidney Greenstreet in Three's a Crowd. More Broadway success came his way when he starred alongside Bob Hope in the 1933 production Roberta. Fred's turn in that play was so successful it netted the aspiring star a contract with Paramount Pictures. This is how Fred finally wound up in Hollywood. In 1935, he appeared alongside Katharine Hepburn in Alice Adams. That same year, he made the first of several appearances on the big screens, starring alongside actress Claudette Colbert, with his first being the feature film The Gilded Lady. Around the time of Double Indemnity's release, Fred was the highest-paid actor in Hollywood. Sadly, in his later years, Fred's golden age Hollywood past was obscured by his later family-friendly roles. Fred MacMurray also had other interests besides acting. In the early 40s, he used his Hollywood wealth to purchase a sprawling plot of land in Northern California that he fashioned into a functioning cattle ranch. At the time, he was married to a dancer named Lillian Lamont. Fred and Lillian tied the knot in 1936, shortly after Fred first showed up in Hollywood. They adopted 2 children together. The couple lived happily until Lillian's tragic death in 1953 from cancer. Fred got remarried the following year to second wife June Haver. He stayed with her until his own death in 1991. Fred and June adopted a pair of twins together and had been married for nearly 4 decades by the time of Fred's passing. Now it's time to hear from you. What was your favorite role from Fred MacMurray? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.